I had the opportunity to play Exfil this last weekend. Let's talk about it and see if it's something you want to pick up.
What'd he say his name was? Gebatron.
Exfil is a first-person shooter that combines some aspects of an extraction shooter with some aspects of a tactical shooter, yet it keeps it on a smaller scale. It released into early access December 11th of 2024. Let's just see what your average Exfil experience might look like. So there are more game modes planned, remember it's early access, but currently here is how it goes down. You join a server, are put onto one of 4 squads, get your loadout squared away, and boom, you're in the game. You spawn in with your 8 squad mates, 3 other enemy squads of 8 spawn in at different spots on the map, and you all have the same goal. Grab the intel from a downed chopper, get to an LZ, call in your own chopper, and get out with the intel. And you only have 20 minutes to do it. So you spawn in and you all come up with a quick plan. There is no squad leader per se, but it sure helps if someone does take the lead. Anyway, from this point, it's kind of up to you and your squad on how to proceed. Do you rush towards the downed chopper and try to grab it and get out fast? Do you wait for other squads and ambush them? Do you trail them and pick them off as they move? Do you stick together or do you split up? In the time I spent with the game, I saw multiple approaches be successful. And just to clarify, you can win by all other squads being eliminated too. Okay, that's the general gist of it, but now you're probably wondering if it's any good. And I'm going to start off with the bad and why will be clear in a little bit. The game does need a lot of work. I went into the training map and the very first thing that struck me was how it didn't strike me. Textures seemed a little muddy, and I guess maybe I just expected more from a game being developed in 2025. Now, I don't think that it looks bad per se, and you definitely don't need AAA graphics to enjoy a game, but it is what it is. I also ran into a lot of bugs in the training area. I'd get hung up on some terrain, trees growing through rocks, stuff like that. The most egregious was one that made it so I couldn't even finish the training session. So I grabbed the intel from the crashed helicopter, then proceeded to the extraction area shown by the blue rectangle marked EX. I called in my chopper. I then placed the intel on the ground just to see how that all worked. Turns out that losing the intel will cause your helicopter to be called off and you'll have to go to a different extraction zone and start over. That's all fine, but the problem was that the new extraction area didn't show up, and there I was, kind of stuck with my only options being to quit or to wait out the match timer. Just leaves a really bad taste in your mouth when you're trying to learn about the game. I then wanted to join an active server and there was nowhere to see my ping, and that's kind of nice to know. Then there was the pre-match menu. I just didn't really care for it. Not that it didn't work, but I just didn't like the layout and thought that maybe some of these tabs didn't necessarily need to be here. And on top of that, some of the very first things I heard in the lobby were extremely toxic. Now, I am aware that developers don't write the code for how their community behaves, but the community is 100% part of the game. After the first match, most of this seemed to go away, but plenty of unsavory speech persisted here throughout the night. Okay, moving on from that, there are different channels for comms, but I felt it was sort of confusing understanding those differences and worse implementing them. More on comms later, but in my time here, players only used the one channel. Probably because it's not clear how it all works. There are also these tabs across the top of your GPS, and I can't tell if they have functionality or not. Since playing, I've seen some screenshots of these working, but I couldn't find a way to get them to work, and that was even after reading through all the settings and controls. Sounds and visual effects are poor. Directional sound is good, don't get me wrong, and I always knew where the sound was coming from and could easily tell how close the source was, but explosions and gunfire seemed underwhelming, and the VFX of grenades going off were some of the worst I've seen in recent memory. Then there's performance. I have a nice rig, it's not top of the line, but it's still a 3090 with all the supporting hardware. I played with 1440p resolution at ultra settings with DLS turned on to quality, and frames couldn't break 60 FPS. I dropped everything down to high and was able to get anywhere between 70 and 80 FPS. It's not terrible, but I guess I expected more. Now for reference, I can play both Hell Let Loose and Squad 44 at 1440p with ultra settings and get anywhere from 90 to 120 FPS. Those games have bigger maps with 3 times the player counts and vehicles and everything. I'm not a hardware expert, but to me it seems that Exfil needs improvement here. Last thing I'll mention is player count. During the free weekend, I thought player count was acceptable, especially for a game that just released into EA. I was playing at 2 a.m. or so US Central Time, which is not a great time to play, and there were about 6 fullish servers and a dozen or so more that were populated in some form. However, just a couple days later, at about 10:30 p.m. on a Monday, still not the greatest time, but not bad either, there were only 18 players on. Now, I had a lot of fun with those 18 players, and the match quality didn't seem to suffer because of it, but I'm sure we'd all like to see more than that, especially if we're going to invest in something. Now on to the good stuff and why I wanted to list the bad stuff first. Well, it's because despite of all that, I had a lot of fun, and I did not expect to. I don't get excited about games that take place in modern settings. I prefer historical settings. Think Squad 44 versus Squad. On top of that, I had such a bad time in the training map and in the lobby that I was pretty sure I was gonna, at the very least feel indifferent to the game. I almost stopped recording at one point just to save space, and I was pretty sure I wasn't even gonna make a video about it, but here I am. So what changed my mind? Lots of things. First of which is that there is no leveling or grinding for loadouts. Kind of nice to see. Everyone gets access to the same equipment right off the bat. No classes or any restrictions. If it's there, you can equip it, which means your loadout is 100% your choice. Next was something that happened on my very first match, and that was a blizzard. Exfil has dynamic weather, and time of day is random too. That means there are night matches where night vision becomes a must. A small detail kind of related to this is that we found out that you can shoot out lights. Refreshing to see that in a game. I really enjoyed the aspect of you having 3 other enemy squads to look out for. It upped the tension, and identifying which squad you came into contact with could be important as you're trying to figure out where everyone is and who's all left. Speaking of tension, there is no losing gear or anything like your regular extraction style shooter. There is still a time limit, and you only have 1 life per match, so that fear or stress is still present, but it's not the gear fear that a lot of players complain about. Just like in tactical shooters, communication plays a big role in how your experience will turn out, and I was fortunate enough to have decent squad mates in this regard. But you have to be careful because enemy squads can hear you if you are close enough. Another thing here is that as soon as your squad mates die, they can no longer talk to you. So no more 2 guys just south of where I died callouts from ghosts. Once they're gone, they're gone. This adds stress, especially if you lose someone who was doing all the heavy lifting of leadership. Someone will need to step up or your squad's whole match can fall apart really quick. Once you die, there is a spectator mode where you can talk to the rest of the dead players and watch the last part of the match play out from different perspectives. Something else I thought was really neat was that during the match debrief, you can see a replay of where everyone went and the contacts made. It's fun seeing this and can help give you context as to how and why certain events played out the way they did. And just to circle back on some of that toxicity I talked about earlier, none of that toxicity was present in any of my squads, so while it was a turnoff early, it didn't affect my experience outside of the main lobby. So this makes me believe that, maybe it's not as prevalent as I might have first assumed. Those are some things that stuck out to me, but there are some other aspects to the game I think you should know about. The marketing claims there is a focus on realism and even goes as far as saying this is a milsim at one point, and it never felt that way to me. There are some nice aspects of realism here, an example being that if you reload a magazine after only firing a few rounds, that magazine stays in your inventory and you'll just eventually put the same mag in your gun and it will have less ammo in it. So there's kind of persistent ammo that way. No magic ammo, which I like. The game has a ballistic system, which is good, but on the other hand, your TTK or time to kill isn't as low as you'd expect from a tactical shooter. It's not an unreasonable, take 12 rifle caliber rounds to the neck before you die, Call of Duty type thing, but it's more than you'd expect given the marketing. There isn't any stamina, and I'm not sure if there is any system in place for things like weapon sway based on your stance. Speaking of stance, you can stand and crouch, but there is no prone. Now this really bothered me at first, but after playing a few matches, I began to think that prone might actually be terrible if put into this game. The TTK started to make sense too, just based on the design of the game mode. Players can be hard enough to see, and if we could go prone, and if everyone died in just one shot, then it would just be 20 minutes of players lying prone in the trees every match. These design choices kept the game moving. I understood that, but it still felt at odds with the marketing, with the experience I expected. And from spending some time reading some Steam reviews, I'm not alone in noticing this conflict. Like I said, it just released into early access. I don't know anything about the dev studio, Misselton Studios, maybe I'm pronouncing that wrong. I think it's only three guys. But Microprose is the publisher and I hold them in high regard. I do think this game has promise. Just listen to these guys.
So yeah, this is like the game I've been waiting for.
I like the pace, and it's not some hold down the trigger and kill somebody.
Takes a lot of, situational awareness. I like the tactics.
Night vision's fun too.
The weather patterns randomize every fucking game. Shit's dope.
It's pretty good, yeah.
Like it really tests like how well you can like plan.
Graphics, gameplay, tactics, baby.
But for an early release, it's not bad.
I asked what other games these people played, and the answers varied from Arma 3 and Reforger to Call of Duty to Siege, Ground Branch, and of course I'm here with Hell Let Loose and Squad 44 as mainstays. Now on to the big question. Should you get involved with Exfil? I think it has promise, and the devs seem to be listening to the community via their Discord, which I will link below. It needs a lot of work and player count is low. But I want to pause here and point something out. I think most people viewing this will be here from my Hell Let Loose content, so I'll address you all specifically. I started playing Hell Let Loose before it was released into early access. It had a lot of bugs. It had a low player count. Nobody knew who Black Matter was. Nobody knew if they could deliver on their roadmap. What it did have was a small community that was passionate about it and wanted it to succeed, with a dev team that had something to prove. I think Exfil has those too. Depending on when you see this, Exfil might be on sale, so if this game concept sounds good to you and you like getting involved in helping shape early access titles, like I do, then I'd say go for it. For the rest of you who are hesitant, there will be another free weekend in 6 to 8 weeks according to what's been said in Discord. Put it in your wish list and follow it. Join the Discord so you can find out if it's for you firsthand when that time comes, then go from there. Alright, that's it for this one. Do all the things that help me beat the algorithm. Subscribe for more. Check the description for other ways to support what I do here. Check the pinned comment for other related links. As always, thank you so much for watching and see you in the next one.